This is Pam Electric Ghost, and we're live on the air for the second time with Roseanne Forte, international best-selling author. And I want to welcome you back to the Pam Electric Ghost podcast. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, and thanks for having me back. So fun. I really enjoyed our conversation last time, so I'm looking forward to this one too.
We just remind the viewers and listeners we are a featured podcast on Newsly. We've got that coupon code GHOST, so you can check that out later. We'll be on there later tonight or tomorrow. And so want to let people know they can check it out, use the coupon code GHOST, and then you can listen on Newsly, the audio version of the podcast. Today, we're actually at episode 1027 of the podcast, and that's tracking since 2016. And today we're going to have the topic of how to navigate being alcohol-free during the holidays, which I think is a timely thing to discuss, because this is the holiday season where that becomes probably a hard thing to figure out. And so we can talk about strategies regarding, trying to fulfill that goal. So again, thank you for being on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it sure is. It's hard for people to do, even for people who aren't regular drinkers, right? They just don't want that as part of their life. So whether you're being intentional or you're like, okay, enough is enough. I really don't want to do this, but my grandma triggers me, my brother triggers me, so I've developed some strategies, 5 things actually, that I can, that should be able to get you through an alcohol-free event or a family gathering. And whether it's for the holidays or for any other time of the year, this system really works. So you ready?
Yeah. This maybe we can talk about like what the steps are, and then we'll discuss like how people can integrate that into their holiday plans and figure out how to be successful.
Yeah, my first strategy is being 100% all in, because 100% all in is so much easier than 99%. And that is the case with anything, right? If we're going, well, I'm pretty sure I can, then that 1% can be a real bugaboo, right? And you start torturing yourself. It is really phenomenal, the difference between 100, like, I'm doing this, I'm like going to bed without it, like you just got it in your mind, versus, oh, I'm really worried, and what happens if this happens? And then you're there and you're thinking about what might happen and what if, and nobody will care, and just want
Yeah.
It's agonizing, right? You can see that. So whether or not you're like what I do in my programs, I challenge people for 12 consecutive weeks, right? So if you're challenging yourself, part of this process, whether you're doing it for 30 days, 100, 120, you want to develop some type of integrity with your word, because for people that try it over and over and over again and fail, you start losing your confidence and integrity. And so I think that 100% attitude starts to give you back that integrity that you want, right?
Yeah, because I mean, I think the issue with that integrity is like you go to some events, family events and social events during the holidays, and there's alcohol around, and there's a peer pressure because they'll just hand you it. They might just be right at the table, and then it's like, if you don't have the constitution to say, well, I don't need it, right? But if it gets put right in front of you, and you don't want to like cause a scene, or you don't want, so the kind of peer pressure of the moment is like, if you're going to have that 100% point of view, like you said, I'm going to be 100%. You got to make it real clear to the folks that you're coming. It's like, I'm not really on that trip. I'm not taking it. Not to be offensive to you guys. It's like, I'm just not in that place, so I don't need it.
Well, I'm going to jump to number 3 then, because what you just said was brilliant. Planning ahead. That is number 3. planning ahead. What are you going to drink? That if you think in advance about what you're going to drink or what the host might have, what you're going to ask for, it makes it so much easier. I mean, if it's an event out at a hotel or something like that, you can plan ahead on your mocktail or your alcohol-free beer, whatever you're doing. But if you're going to your sister's house, maybe you look up some fun mocktail recipes, you bring it with you. And that way, when somebody does, like what you said, they just put the drink in front of you. They assume, they pour the glass of wine. You're like, no, thank you. I've got mine. I brought mine.
Mm-hmm.
And that planning ahead makes all the difference in the world. I just talked to so many people that were, like you say, they're just surprised or they're not ready. And they kind of get nervous because it's right there in front of them. But 100% all in, plan ahead, boy, that gives you just a lot of confidence, right?
But when you're planning ahead, does it make sense to actually talk to the organizer of the event, whether they're somebody you know or don't know, or to let them know, is like, I'm on this non-alcoholic journey, and like are there options at your party? Do you have those options?
Yeah, it's so funny.
Have you thought about those options, or you just didn't think about it?
Well, here's the great thing about that. I think when you first, if you're just now associated with or wanting to be associated with being a non-drinker, I think it is a good time to call the host and go, hey, what do you got to drink? I'm not drinking this Christmas season or this holiday season. And they're like, oh, I'll have some, apple cider or whatever. And maybe that doesn't,
seltzer, soda, or like the mocktails. Like
or
if
they might not have anything, I don't know.
Because there's also situations like I'm a diabetic, and diabetics, like, we have the same kind of concern whether or not we were, we had like, I'm a type 2, and I really can't have alcohol at this point with my type 2 journey. Is like it actually affects my A1C really bad, and so I just can't have it. It doesn't work for me. And so I would suggest to people, like, well, I need something that's like low glucose too. So that people have the cider and they'll have other things. Like, I have to have something that's like, seltzer with a little lemon in it, or something that doesn't have your diet drinks, or something that's not going to knock my sugar out. And,
Right.
I have to be clear with people to say, hey, otherwise it's like, I'm just going to have seltzer or water,
Yeah. And depending on who it is, if it's a family member or a really close friend that you don't mind asking, fine. But if you're unsure, just bring your own. I used to go to pool parties and bring seltzer water and grapefruit juice, and and it's a nice, refreshing mocktail, right? And so if you're unsure or you don't think they're going to be, you can count on the fact that they're going to have something that you're going to enjoy. And that's another thing, make sure you enjoy. Don't go, just water. I mean, bring it.
Well, if you're at a place where they really don't have it, like if they've gone like full in on being an alcohol event and have everything under the sun, and then didn't think about the people who don't drink, then you're kind of left with the seltzer or the water, the mineral water or whatever. But
Right.
you kind of bring your own just as a backup, if it's that kind of situation.
Yeah. And so that is point number 3. Now, point number 2, because we skipped over point number 2, but maybe I should bring 3 up to maybe I should jiggle these around a little. But point number 2 is being future focused. And there's a reason that you're putting alcohol to the side, right? Maybe it's affecting your health. Maybe it's affecting your productivity. Maybe it's affecting your mindset, your mental wellness. I don't want to say mental health, but mental wellness, relationships. There could be a lot of reasons that you're choosing to take a challenge, whether it's 30 days, 12 weeks. So when you're future focused, what you're saying is, what's possible when I don't drink for this short amount of time? And so you remember that when you have that craving, and you go, wait, I really, if I drink now, then I can't see what's in the future. And I always like to say, your future
Mhm.
self, well, thank you for the hard work you're doing today. And that is definitely in the case of not drinking alcohol. Your future self will very thank you a lot, actually. And that's what I love to see, is when people realize how much. Yeah. So
But it seems like Christmas, the whole Christmas and Hanukkah and all the other things that happen at this time of year, a lot of it's to do with like a dinner or a party. But like when you get to New Year's is like really kind of alcohol intensive. It seems like that even though Christmas could be too, but it seems like New Year's is kind of all about that. Um, so is there different strategies for different type of holiday events? Knowing what the focus can be on certain ones.
you know what I like to tell people is to give themselves a different kind of challenge during those events. We just had a client who, um, he was faced with an event. It was a reunion, for a high school reunion for his wife, and his wife really wanted him to go, and he didn't know if he was ready to do it. And we went through all the 5 things, but one of the things I challenged him to do was to look at something different, like, how can I create connection with different people? Like, what does it feel like to create connection and have deep conversation? Or like, how much closer can I feel to my wife or my significant other when I'm not drinking? Like, start doing these like little
Yeah,
scientific tests, right?
yeah, what can you do differently if you're not don't have a drink in your hand? Like if that
Or
drink is giving you that liquid courage, like if you've always been used to the liquid courage to kind of be able to not be uptight at the party, because like, oh, loosen up. Yeah, that's what everybody's, oh, loosen up. You got to be like on. So the typical thing about a party is like you loosen up by taking a drink, right? And so, but can you learn to do that without the drink? Can you learn to be comfortable in that social environment and not be triggered and not be have a lot of anxiety?
it will be uncomfortable at first. Anytime you change any habit, even if you promise yourself not to use your cell phone before 7 o'clock, right? Any bad habit is hard to change. And so, or it's challenging, but that's where the mindset comes in, because 100% is fairly easy and 99% is fairly difficult. Um, but the other thing I challenge people to do at events that's different is to notice how many people really don't drink that much. That was a big shocker to
Yeah,
me. Like, wait a minute, was I the only one that drank that much? Like, a lot of people like nurse one drink, you know.
yeah,
Um, and I was shocked at how many people didn't drink alcohol like I did. That's one awareness strategy. Another awareness strategy is the opposite. Look at people who are drinking heavily and start watching everything change. And
mm,
their voice gets louder. They get closer to you, more touchy feely. Um, they say things they probably wouldn't have said.
or inappropriate
Yeah.
behavior.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And when you're an observer, you can have some fun with this, or you can be horrified like I was and go, "Oh my gosh, I thought it was funny. I didn't realize I was that loud."
yeah.
Right?
You start to have that perspective where you're actually observing and listening and watching, and then it's like, wow. And one thing I also learned is like I used to be an Uber driver during the holidays, and I would get
Oh,
get
you see a lot.
I would get the result of the people who were kind of out of control, and they purposely used the Uber so they could be out of control versus somebody who drives to a party and knows they have to drive back, right? They tend to be more responsible knowing that they probably don't want a DUI. But like if you've got this mindset, like Uber kind of enabled people to get into situations where I would get these regular customers, and every time I met them, they were totally trashed. And I'm like, well, that's that customer. That's what they choose to do in the weekend, on the holidays, on St. Patrick's Day, on whatever. They would always choose to be in that state, and I'd see them in that state, and I was like, wow, they're choosing to be in this zone.
Right. Well, I totally. I want to know from you: are people better tippers or worse tippers when they're trying?
Well, you have certain people, their personality is kind of accentuated, and so you have the kind of happy drunk, and they're not
Sure.
obnoxious, so they tend to be good tippers. But the person who is tends to be, they like the bad drunk that gets into a bad mood and they find reasons to get mad.
Oh,
Like
yeah, that
like
makes
they
sense.
give you the directions for home, and they're the wrong directions, and they're the ones that put it in the app. So then they blame the Uber driver, and they don't want to give you a tip, and they say, "Well, you messed up." It's like, "Well, you're the one that put the direction in." So
Wow.
so it's like the person who doesn't take responsibility for the direction, that it's kind of not fully there, and they tend to be hard to deal with, like the hard customer, the
Well,
one with
bless your
damage in the
soul
car.
for being an Uber driver on New Year's Eve, man. That's got to be like
Yeah,
hard.
well, I don't do that anymore.
No, but
Like
I mean,
like
when
that
you did, that's like sainthood kind of work. You know what I mean? I mean, I know you're helping people, you're earning a living, but dang, that can't be easy. I don't
it
think I.
was hard. I learned, like what level I would go to. Like, I would not go past, like, 1 a.m. I was the kind of Uber driver that I did not go past that. I dealt with a lot of people going to the party and maybe the first people leaving the party, but I don't want to be with the people, like, last people leaving the party. I made that decision a lot because the 4 a.m. people was like, I didn't want
Well,
that
they're
group.
throwing up in the
Yeah,
car too,
yeah,
right?
yeah. The ones that are obnoxious and don't know where they're going, just causing all kinds of trouble that I don't need. So I just, and some drivers, well, I can get a lot of money at that time. So, but how much damage does it cause to your car?
Yeah,
How much,
I don't
how much of a problem is it? Is like, it's too much of a problem for me.
I don't want to clean up anybody's throw up. So yeah,
Yeah, that was.
yeah. Oh my goodness, There's not enough money for that one. But anyway, yeah, future focused, and I do think who do you want to be, and you can do what we're talking about. Compare it to what we're looking at and being honest with ourselves about how we showed up and challenging ourselves of who could we show up, who could we be differently at this event. And I will just tell you that at my very first function, and I was a very heavy drinker, and I hung out with a lot of other heavy drinkers, but I didn't want to lose my friends, so I did go out with them to bars, and super uncomfortable. And I remember the first time, and I'm like, oh my gosh, do I belong here anymore? But I
Mhm.
just kind of got that idea out of my head, and I go, well, I have to stay a little bit, right? And talk to my friends. But once I got that idea out of my head, or that discomfort, and I started talking to my friends, like 5 minutes later, it was like, this is so much fun. I don't care. So it was that initial discomfort. I think maybe because your body's just doing something that it's not accustomed to doing.
Yeah,
But once I
definitely.
got in the group, I was like, I can be friends with them. This is still fun. And I ended up staying a long time, as opposed to not, I had planned on leaving early because I had told myself this lie that I didn't belong. And I did. They didn't really care or notice that I wasn't
Yeah,
drinking.
I guess that's, you have to experience, like, what the level, is, because like if you feel like the people you're around are gonna kind of get you off the way, gonna pull you into something you don't want to be into. If they don't respect your boundary, if
Yeah, and
they keep on pushing when you like, if they're cool with you being the way you are now,
mhm.
right? Then that's fine. But if they're not cool with it, then I think that's where you have to start making decisions. Like, well, they're making it hard for me to be there. So if it, yeah,
And I'm going to be honest, in my years of coaching, I've noticed that men are so much more hard on other men for not drinking, showing up, and they get put, they're that 100% all in is super important, because they get called names, they start pouring beer,
they're
they
bullied
yeah, they bully you into it, and that doesn't happen as much for
with
women.
women. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
the frat boy behavior. Because I was in a frat and it was a nerdy frat, but there was still that frat boy behavior. And
Mhm.
that frat boy behavior was all about bullying and the elder frat guys taking the recruits and saying that they gotta be subservient and pushing people down and be bullying over and over again. And I just got like when I was in college, I was like, I thought I wanted to be in the frat. And I got into like the science, the techie frat. But even the techie frat had the problem with alcohol. And eventually, to me, it's like I decided I don't like that because my dad was like, was an alcoholic, kind of a binge drinker, and I didn't like it, and I never liked it, and I never got into it. And then when I said, "Well, I thought this frat was supposed to help me socially and everything," and then I just saw all these negative aspects, and I ended up getting out of it because I couldn't find a way at that time when I'm 21, 19, 20 years. I couldn't figure out how to be with these guys and deal with the stuff they were doing. I didn't like the bullying. I didn't like the kind of alcoholic games they were doing. I couldn't stand it. So I got out of it. And people go,
Well
well, how come you did that? And I was like, well, I couldn't deal with it.
well, I think this is another, part of the process is being aware of who you're hanging out with and what their motivations are. I think I see stories that people don't care, people don't notice, people love you for you, but I also see stories of heartbreak and realizing the only reason they cared about me was I was a drinking buddy. And the minute I didn't drink, I didn't belong. And there's a gamut. And as heartbreaking as that is, I would ask you to ask yourself, what kind of friend do you want? One that cares about who you are, or one that cares about whether or not you drink with them, And I don't think I lost any friends, over it until I started coaching. Then it became a little bit different, but I totally understand that. But nobody really cared. But I do see some heartbreaking, like, wow, they don't want to hang out with me. And I'm like, well, what does that say about your friendship? And what does that say about who you want to be and the friends that you want to have, and so this all, whether it's 30 or 100, 12 weeks, I'm sorry, 84 days, it's all an awareness situation. Who do I want to become? What am I doing? What's it causing me? How much better is life? How did it used to be? How is it now? So yeah, it is.
Well,
You
it's
want
kind of like, not just even the friendship, but kind of being felt like the peer pressure of the frat was this is going to give me social connections for upward mobility. But do I
right.
have to deal with that bullying to get those social connections? And I said, well, I didn't like the bullying to the point where it was like these guys aren't even really friends. These guys are like saying that they're going to give me all this social networking mobility, but they're doing all this negative behavior. And I was like, I can't accept the negative behavior to be able to get in the club to get the upward mobility. It's like, no, I made a decision. It wasn't going to work for me.
Well, that's why I like that future focus too. I say make a path that goes towards your North Star, and your North Star is the values you have, what you want to say about yourself or what you want others to say about you when you're gone, right? That's your North Star. And a lot of us we're not focused on it early on, and we just get involved in the things of the moment. But when you think, like you're saying, this isn't who I want to be, this isn't how I want to get ahead, this isn't, that's what you're talking about, your North Star. So I love that.
Yeah, just figuring out like who you are. And a lot of times people don't know who they are. And they could be, whatever age. I mean, I've met kids, that are 19 and they know what they want to do more than some 40-year-old. They're very directed and they know what they want to do. They're already got their, working on their MBA. They're really advanced. They're doing all these things. And other people that don't, and age doesn't always necessarily mean that you're going to know where you are. Right.
Right.
It's sometimes you have situations where the age doesn't really give you a benefit. So, because you might have had imposter syndrome, you might have all these other things, and you didn't really figure it out where somebody else might have figured it out earlier. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's always interesting because some people always want to just like, oh, if they forget, the elders always know everything. It's like not necessarily.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to take a moment now that you mentioned that. Like, it's never, a lot of people say it's too late for me. And I will tell you that, I'm nearing Social Security age. It's never too late. It's never too late to redefine your North Star. It's never too late to quit drinking. It's never too late to mend relationships. It's never too late to focus on your health. I basically thought I was retired at some point, and now I'm writing a book and I'm starting a company, so
Yeah.
it's never too late. It doesn't matter if you don't know where you're going at 40.
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it because every day that you're here, you have an opportunity to move forward with and progress. Unless you don't believe you can, then that becomes the problem.
Amen. Amen.
That becomes the problem.
You can only move in the direction of your thoughts. And if you think that life is over, I'm washed up, I can't get through this is exactly what's going to happen. But if you have a mindset of, dang it, I'm not putting up with this. Look at, there are so many stories in this world about, Walt Disney's my favorite, being fired for not being creative enough. I mean,
Yeah,
what if he had told himself he was washed up because of that?
yeah. It's like the ultimate creative enterprise.
Yeah.
Like an imagination factory guy that
I
built
think
like and then the people said he wasn't creative enough.
another great one is Oprah was fired from the TV broadcasting because she wore her heart on her sleeve.
That's right. That's
You
her
know what
asset.
I mean? I just think your differences can be your gifts, and that's what I like to tell. I'm faith-based, so I'm like, God created you for a purpose with a gift, and you need to use it. Like that's and everybody that gets caught up in this drinking thing eventually starts telling myself, God, I used to be this, and I used to be that, and I used to be capable of that. I know I said that a lot. But I found that person again. It's what the substance stole from me. And so, yeah, I mean, there's a lot to say about future focus, isn't there?
But it's also like if you've got too pessimistic a view, like oh, the holidays are hard. Right? If you already frame it that it's
Right.
hard, oh, it's almost impossible for me not to drink in the holidays. Well, you're already setting up the condition for you to fail, right? You're
Right.
not thinking about that they 100% all in, which I think is really, really great to give yourself that focus. Because if you give yourself the focus, well, it's impossible.
Yeah, it
But, I'm
is.
going to try it, but you're like, well, you're already kind of setting yourself up that you're not
If
going
you
to.
use the word try, you're a goner,
Yeah,
right? Do we agree on that?
yeah, that's not going to work.
No, you need to get excited about getting to the other side. And I have a client I quote all the time. She's like, you never will regret saying no to alcohol the morning after. It will never be a regret of yours. And so it's just being excited about the win, about knowing there's many that have done so before you. It sounds like you and me included. And, it's okay. It may be uncomfortable the first time, but we're giving you permission. It's okay. Yeah.
With the
So,
vulnerability, I think a lot of people don't like feeling vulnerable. So they medicate or self medicate so they don't feel, so they kind of numb themselves to not feel. So if
yeah.
they're, if you're, you're fearful of what people are going to think about how you look, how you talk, how you present yourself, and then you kind of, you get the liquid courage so you don't have to deal with that. But then that doesn't, it has other effects, and it really doesn't solve the problem of learning how to deal with the vulnerabilities of life, kind of going into something kind of straight edge. In music, we call it like the straight edge guys. We don't use any substance. We come into the session and we're there to play. And we're not using anything other than our ability to like be in the moment.
Well,
And
and
that's kind of enough. But some people used to think in music, well, you had to come in under the influence of something to kind of get the groove. It's like that's not necessarily true. Most of the time, that actually prevented you from getting the groove.
and wouldn't you say that you and those who don't drink are now an inspiration for many who do? Because I find, like, how do you do that? Like, how did you do that? Nobody, when you establish yourself as a non-drinker, it literally is not an issue to anybody else. It was only an issue to you. You know what I mean? Or
Yeah.
people that are heavy drinkers. But I find there is so much respect given for people who can have fun and deal with social situations or work situations without the use of a substance. Do you
Yeah.
experience?
Well, I think what people find out is like you end up showing up on time. You end up being able to do the whole session and you don't have complications. Where the old thought was, oh, you had to have some kind of buzz. And then what happened? The session kind of got wasted. The session that you're in wasn't productive. The
Yeah,
guy kept on disappearing to the bathroom, or they kept on miscuing. They kept on making mistakes. You got to keep on doing it over and over. So the idea that actually works, like most of the time you look at it, it didn't really work. Like you had a romanticized a vision of what that is. And what it was is like you're not productive, you're wasting money, you're wasting time, you're wasting everybody else's time. So it's like they're getting to the point where people are showing up in their present and they're just dealing with their emotions in that frame without the using the
oh my,
affectations of the substances. And you actually end up doing a better job. But
and oh my gosh, you talked about getting ahead, right? You want to get ahead? Don't use substances. I promise. You'll get ahead,
yeah,
right? Am I lying?
yeah,
No.
it's the way it is because like all those things that you think it makes you more with it or it makes you more hip or at least in the creative
Creative.
world, it tends to maybe you got a vision from something, but what ends up happening is it's like ends up having I think what happens is like the more you use it, the less productive you are. So you get they end up being not as productive and you don't move forward and you end up getting caught in like a paralysis of not moving, but kind of
Yeah,
being in a fog. If you're in a fog, you're not going to generate what you think you're generating. You might have thought you're generating something, but you're listening to it, it's not usable. you
I
know,
know. There's a lot of things you think, but anyway, you want to continue on with
no,
that?
I think I was just pointing out that I think that I think once people realize that being coming into something and feeling, you know, uh, being open to, maybe being hurt, maybe open to the moment and not having something to take the edge off of that moment, you start to embrace life because life goes up and down and there's things that happen and it's not always the best experience initially, but you learn from those things.
Well, alcohol, certainly for me, and I think for most people, makes us more susceptible to emotions that we didn't want. Like we fly off the handle easily, we get hurt more easily. And I think without alcohol, we get to experience, discomfort and pain, but we learn how to deal with it, in really healthy ways. And it's not as hard as we once thought. As a matter of fact, when we compare it to how we dealt with things with alcohol, it's definitely a benefit. So yeah, I agree with you.
So it's like a less triggered response. Your voice isn't as loud. You're not as
Hmm.
bombastic. You might not be like you might have lost some of your self restraint, and then you're like sorry about what happened. It's like, well, oh, I kind of flew off the handle. But
Well, that's it, right? Okay, and so this is stay future focused, and that's exactly where was I and where do I want to be. I don't want to be that person that you're describing, right? The loud, it's just remembering where you started, why you want it, and stop romanticizing about something that was so toxic to your life. And yeah, you might have to learn how to process emotions or how to not be shy, but it's possible. We all can do it, and it's kind of fun when you give yourself permission to do something different and you grow from it. What happens is you develop more self-confidence, right?
and also the memories you have from that moment are going to be more clear. That you're actually it's not going to be fuzzy, it's not going to be hazy, and you have less regret
Or it's
for
not going to be zero. Like, I mean, seriously, a lot of people black out. They don't even remember. At the end, I wouldn't remember what I ate and until I saw it on the plate in my, on my coffee table the next morning. It's just, yeah, so much better on this side. So,
there's so many benefits, but I think with commercialism and what you see on in social media and on TV, we're getting fed all this information that's saying, oh, that's going to make it better. Like if you have this product at the party, you're
right,
going to have a good time. So like then you have to not only do you have to deal with the peer pressure of the people at the party, but the kind of social structure of society is saying, oh yeah, this makes it a more enjoyable experience if you have this drink. If you have these things that, so then how do you redefine that and come up with different things to do? Like you come up with other things you could do, like maybe you get into like the actual cuisine. You
right.
get into the parties, like people playing games at the party, and actually focus on maybe playing billiards or playing cards or doing some kind of word game
I
or
bet you win more often too.
yeah. Yeah, because if you're there, then you actually might win.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, that was future focus. That was a good one. We have a lot of reason to be future focused, right?
Yeah.
So this one probably won't surprise you, but it's really important if you are intentional about wanting to be successful during the event. And that is creating accountability. And you mentioned earlier maybe the host, but maybe that you don't know the host. We don't know. It doesn't need to be the host. It should be the person you're going with, right? You should tell the person you're going with that you don't plan to drink that night. And so you've just set the stage of accountability. I always tell people, I don't even think we've mentioned, I'm the author of a daily devotional, right? The plans he
Mhm.
has for me. But if you get the devotional, you have access to a private Facebook. And I tell people if you're going alone and you don't trust yourself, or the person you're going with doesn't give you enough, a lot of people go, well, they don't support me, they don't care. Well, then post in Facebook, hey, I'm going to an event tonight and I plan on being alcohol free. Boom, accountability, right? There's a lot of ways that accountability can happen: a friend, a family member, the host, or a Facebook group. But
Hmm.
once you get something out of the darkness and into the light, then again, it makes it a lot easier to be 100% all in, because you've stated your intention. You're not going to tell somebody I plan on being alcohol free and then go, well, maybe I will, right? They don't
Yeah,
work
it's not all
together.
in. Yeah. Well, it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, it's like when you have to make a declarative statement, right? You got to actually do it. And it's a lot of things in life. Is like as an artist, is like you can have all your work sitting in your room, or you can actually put it out, right? And it's the idea of like you said, posting it on the Facebook group is like, so thinking about posting it isn't to posting it. Like you could be all these people thinking about doing a podcast, and then 5 years later, and they never did the podcast. So it's like, yeah, it's
Thinking
a good
about being
idea.
accountable and not being accountable. Right. I
Yeah,
love
yeah, you got to do it. Like it's like, and people have to say, "Well, I got to get this step and that step before I do it." It's like sometimes it's that first step is the hard step, and
it really is, because I think that you're dead on right, because once you tell somebody, it's real, right? When it sits in your head, it just circles around and it takes up a lot of space. But once you tell somebody, it just makes that 100% all in so much easier. And now you're like, what is it? I'm thinking like of a Disneyland ride. Once you strap yourself in,
or Space
once
Mountain.
you
Like
get on the ride, you're
once
committed.
you're on Space Mountain, you're on Space Mountain. You can't get off of it. Like once you're on that climb, like you like any kind of roller coaster, like that's it. Like you
Yeah.
start, you can't back out once you're on that first climb. It's like you're already all in. That's it.
Yep. 100%. See, that's you're right, that taking that first step, getting it out of your head and into another person's space is where accountability comes. And
It's really like in the plans he has for me. It's like a lot of times people like you can have as an artist, I have a general plan when I'm going to write a song. It's like I sit down and say I'm going to write the song today, and then
mhm,
what makes me write the song, I hit the record button, and then I hit my fingers on the piano, and I was like, well, it started. That I can't back out now.
right.
I'm on the keys. It's going to happen. But if you just sat there and like, well, I'm going to write down the lyrics, I'm going to go do this, I got to go set this and set that, then
That
you say,
sounds like
well,
procrastination.
yeah, what happens is like you'll get guys who spend all the time trying to prep before they actually hit the keys. And
Right.
then they say, well, it's not right, so I won't hit the key. Well, me, I was like, well, I can go back and fix stuff later. So I'm going to hit the key and start. And I think that's where the plan is. I'm going to be creative. I'm going to create that piece.
Yeah.
And it's like, don't worry about the mistakes. Don't worry about where it's going. You hit the bad note because there are no bad notes. It's like you take it and it takes you on a journey. And I think a lot of times people have a hard time starting that journey. Like you said,
Well,
it's like you gotta have
fear,
an idea.
yeah. Fear is just a killer of dreams. And it's really hard for me to watch somebody gripped in fear, because it takes over, and it kills all your dreams, whether it's creating or moving towards your new future self. And but the only way to get out of it is to practice it, and maybe baby steps. I'm just talking about the fear thing overall, but
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
But I think, navigating the holidays to be alcohol free, that's a goal, but you have to put it into practice. Like you said, like you have to, talk to people, find out, are there going to be options?
Yeah.
Or talk to your person, like you said, the partner you're going with, to let them know. So it's not like as soon as you hit the table, as soon as you walk in the door, then they know ahead of time. So it's a communication. And sometimes communicating, maybe that's like a big problem with some people because they make assumptions. If
Oh,
you,
bad.
yeah, if you just make assumptions that everybody kind of knows it, or
Yeah.
there always is going to be this, well, you won't know that until you actually got to put it into the light.
Yeah, exactly. And then yeah, so far we have 100% all in, future focused, plan ahead, and accountability. I have another one. You're going to like this one too. I know you are. Develop your elevator speech.
Oh, that's a good one.
Because you're inevitably, if people are accustomed to seeing you drinking, why are you drinking? What are you drinking? Why not? Blah, blah, so
Have your
it's
reason.
super important to think in advance about what you're going to say and how you're going to say it. Your tonality is everything, more than your words. Being excited about, like, oh my gosh, I'm just taking a challenge and I'm loving it, right? Versus, oh, I just had to put it aside. It's like, oh my gosh, that sounds terrible. Have a drink. Like, you want to show some amount of confidence. And the more you say it confidently, the more you will believe it too. You are taking a challenge. You're looking forward to what's possible without it and seeing what it's like. And the more confident you say it, the less likely somebody's going to mess with you. I have actually on my website, the planshehasporme.com, I have, you can download 20 flashcards for things that you can say at an event that just share why you're not drinking, whether it's like, I got to get up early in the morning, or, I'm going to the gym, or there's just a bunch of different things that you can say with confidence. And having that in advance is, I know that you understand this based on what you've said already, is just that they're tools in your toolbox. So that, because one of the things I hear all the time is they were unprepared for somebody to give you the drink. They were unprepared for what somebody was going to say. They were unprepared for, the trigger. And so these are all steps to be prepared,
Well, preparation is like, is the main, a lot of what you do in life is like at least learning from your mistakes and lessons learned, and also the work that goes into it. Right. And there's work in what trying to be your future self. You got to tell that story. You have to have that pitch for your future self that you believe it. Like, so if you're given that elevator pitch to get that job, you got to make that person who's going to hire you believe that you're the best person. Well, you're trying to you represent this is my future self, and this is my current self. This is where I am. You want you to respect that. So if you get people to respect it because you believe the story, like it's like an actor. Like if you when you're practicing your lines, it's like you want the audience to actually believe that I'm that person.
Right.
So how do you do that? Well, you've got to have the intention. And when you're a songwriter, you want people to believe in what you're doing as a song is worthwhile for you to listen to the first 30 seconds before you turn it off. So you got to have that the passion to kind of put that energy so people will feel it. So I think it's the same kind of energy that you put into it, and don't like come into it lackluster. Put it with your best effort.
Yeah, and I developed like 12 core concepts for it's a course that I have, but one of the core concepts to staying, being successful is I get to. Like, you get to do this. You don't have to. You can drink again, but you get to see what's possible. It's that mindset. If you believing that you're going to see something different will give you that attitude that you get to. And I love that. So, yeah.
Well, I think what we've given the audience is a lot of different tools in our conversation, and now we've got your website, the plans he has for me. You've mentioned you've got the cards, and you've got the strategies.
Oh,
We
yeah.
talked about the top 5, and all those things are there, right? The things that we've talked about.
Yeah, I even have an article on this particular thing. So if they want to download an article, there's an article section as well. So.
Well, I think this is a great time that we've done this, and it will be out there on all the platforms that we're not known to be on. We're on all the major podcast platforms, whether you want to watch or listen, and we'll get that landing page to you like we always do, and people will be able to check it out on, we were live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch, but we're going to be on all these other platforms by tomorrow. So
Yeah.
we'll have all that for everybody to check out at
Well,
their
happy
leisure.
holidays to everyone, and if you're choosing to be alcohol free, we hope that we both provided it a much easier way to do that, right?
Yeah, I think it's just a cool thing to talk about, where people maybe didn't have an idea how to approach it, and now you've given some people something that's digestible and be able to understand it and try it out. Not to try it out, but you got to look into it and then see if it's for you. And then, like we said, you probably can't just try it. You got to do 100% if you're going to be into this kind of idea. But at least engage by checking out what we've talked about and dive into it deeper at the plans he has for me.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me. It was great. Always great to talk to you.
Have a good night. Have a good holiday season.
You too.